Hello everyone and welcome. This is SEC Fanatic, your podcast home for SEC news, interviews, and all kinds of other stuff. Thank you guys for watching from wherever you are or listening on iTunes, Stitcher, or watching on YouTube. Today we have lots of great stories for you all. Preseason preliminary. I will say the segment that I've been doing is not going to be on here today. I'm going to release that as a separate video on Friday, I do believe. But I'll get that out to you all as soon as possible. It is, though, only going to be a video. It's going to be YouTube exclusive. It's not going to be on the podcast site. It's just going to be a YouTube video. Preseason preliminary. The rest of the podcast, though, to what we have today, what will be releasing Thursday, is going to be available on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube as part of the main podcast. What we have coming up for you all today is just a few quick reminders, and then we're going to jump right in to our interview with Dr. Tommy John III. Now, he is a doctor who works a lot with athletes. He's worked with everyone from NFL players to 9-year-old kids. So he's a very well-rounded doctor when it comes to just humans and health and athletes, etc. And so he should be a great interview for you guys, especially parents of athletes who want to keep their kids healthy, and also athletes themselves. If you want to prolong your career, I think he's definitely a great guy to listen to and provides a lot of information. I will say, though, before we begin, a reminder that there is a giveaway for a 247 Viz LED headlamp, and you can win that for free. For all you sleepwalkers, for all you and people who like night walking, and it's a free light. Now, you can only use it half of the time because the sun is free light during the day. But if you want free light during the night, this is where to go. The 247 Viz LED headlamp can be given to you for free by emailing secsportsfanatic@gmail.com with the subject line giveaway. You can also like, comment, or share any SEC Fanatic post on either our pages on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and you will be entered into that as well. Entries close on August 1st. So get it done before then, and you could be the winner of a 247 Viz LED headlamp. By emailing, you can also sign up for the SEC Fanatic newsletter, which gives a behind-the-scenes look into SEC Fanatic with show notes, commentary from me, as well as just other random little tidbits of information that would be fun, useful, and interesting for any of you people who love the SEC. Before we get to our interview, though, I will say there's a story in particular that picked up my interest when I was going through Twitter, and I saw this story, and every once in a while, there's a story from outside the SEC that's just so important that you have to share it. And this one it meant something to me. And so I just thought I might as well share it with you all. In 2016, a Troy football player by the name of Nathan Harris died in a motorcycle accident. Fast forward a year to 2017, and Troy goes on to take a share of the Sun Belt Conference Championship. They went 11-2 with a big Hive beating LSU, who, by the way, we'll be doing preseason preliminary on. We'll be taking a look at their 2018 team. But Troy went 11-2, beat LSU, and took a share of the Sun Belt Conference. And just recently, head coach Neil Brown, when they started getting their championship rings back, he reached out to the family of Harris and sent them a ring. And so I just thought that was a very nice thing to do, and it kind of shows what football is really about. Sure, there are rivalries, and sure there are, very people who hate each other because of the sport, but if you really get down to what football is, what it's about, it's really about family if you do it right. If you're a good, cohesive team, if you're a championship team, then there's a family aspect there. Not even if you're a championship team. If you're just a good football team, and your football team is filled with good people, as well as good players, then it's about the family aspect. Regardless of your record or what championships you won, if you can form that family bond, that's really what football's about. That's really what life's about, is relationships. And so I just thought that was a really good and important story to share with you all. So moving on from that in my little rant, I just thought that was important. You can go check that out too. I'm not sure what website I used. It was you can just go look it up at Troy head coach gives Nathan Harris championship ring if you'd like a little bit of further detail. Before we move on to our interview, one last quick reminder that you guys have the opportunity to vote for the SEC Fanatic Player of the Year and the Crazy Sport of the Week by going to the Google form in the description of whatever you're listening or watching on. If you're watching the YouTube version, there's going to be a little I dot that comes up right somewhere in here. You can click on that, and I have some suggestions there for you, but I would more recommend you go to the Google form, because then you get to write in whoever you want to be the SEC Fanatic Player of the Year and the Crazy Sport of the Week. So without further ado, I know I've kept you all for a little while, but let's get on to our interview with Dr. Tommy John III. Hello everyone, this is Dr. Tommy John III, if I'm correct.
You are correct.
Awesome. You are a former pro baseball player and now you are a doctor who handles sports injuries.
Yes, sir. I played 2 years of professional baseball after 4 in college at the Division I level, and I'm now a performance and healing specialist. Sports injuries are a specialty, but it's more human athlete injuries, since we're all athletes competing in life. Soft tissue injuries come in many shapes, sizes, and forms, and I just get people in the best position to heal themselves and perform at their best.
Okay, so starting on your doctor side of things, well, first, you talked about how life is kind of like being an athlete. Will you take us back to your time as an athlete and playing in baseball, and just talk to us real quick about your baseball career?
Sure. So I was the Gatorade State Player of the Year in Minnesota in 1996 as a middle infielder and pitcher. I went to Furman University, which is in Greenville, South Carolina. That was the Division I level. The reason I chose Furman was because they were the only school that had agreed to let me play middle infield and pitch, because I was not yet fully developed, as most athletes are not, healthfully. And I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was a very good second baseman, shortstop, and I also pitched very well. So I just didn't want to limit my choices, and Furman allowed me that option, as well as it being a great school. So I played 4 years there. I was invited, one of my dreams came true. I was invited after my freshman year to play in the Cape Cod League as a pitcher. And it was shortly during the summer, I had a little bit of achiness in my shoulder, and I went to get an MRI and get that figured out, and they inject dye to get the image done, and preventatively I undertook the MRI, which came out negative, nothing was wrong, but the dye got infected, and so my shoulder was never the same ever since. So that rehab process was about 3 years, and after that I finished college with a bachelor's and master's in health and exercise science. And then I played 2 years of independent baseball with the Tyler Roughnecks of the All-American Association, and then the Schaumburg Flyers in the Northern League. And that was as a pitcher. And then I called it quits and just started a performance and healing business, and been at it ever since.
Okay. So your injury kind of paved the way for becoming a doctor yourself.
Yeah, I started to see that the way we were rehabbing and the way the process was done, there was more to injuries than just protocols. And people weren't just elbows, knees, and necks. They were individuals. And every single individual had a different component and a different string of circumstances that led to the injury in the first place. So healing then can't be cookie cutter and protocol. And that's just the greatest stories never follow a protocol when it comes to medicine. And so I wanted to pull apart the mystery that was performance and healing and rehabbing injuries. And that's what led me to kind of asking more questions of why. Why did certain injuries happen in some and not in others? Why did some people come back faster, better, at a higher level, able to sustain that level, not just come back? And so that's where I'm at now. I've come no closer to mastering it because nobody's going to figure out the human being, but I'm on the right track.
I noticed in your book that you mentioned that you're seeing more and more of young athletes becoming injured and getting these injuries that usually much older people are suffering. Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, so that's the scary part. So the injuries and conditions I was working with people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, I was now seeing in 10, 11, 12-year-olds, and currently still do. I just heard the other day a 9-year-old underwent ACL surgery. A 9-year-old just underwent ACL surgery for basketball play. 9. So exactly, and so it's a combination of many things. In the book I detail it in there's 3 components to this perfect storm that is leading to these injury epidemics in all sports, not just baseball, but concussions are up, ACLs, spine fractures, stress fractures. There's degenerative conditions in all sports that we're seeing at epidemic proportions. And it's based on these 3 factors. 1, the youth sports industry is a $15 billion a year industry. That's camps, clinics, showcases, specialized training, indoor facilities, you name it. Everybody's making a buck off of these young athletes and pushing that elite youth is the way to go. And that's where our country is now. So we're talking billions of dollars that people are pouring in to try to create the super athlete. So you got that. Then you have the American lifestyle. Now, our lifestyle in this country, we're an immediate gratification kind of a society, sadly. We're malnourished and overfed, and that's a paradox in terms, meaning we consume a lot of stuff that's not food. And so, especially youth, they're just not healthy with what they're eating. They're overstimulated by technology. They're playing video games more. They're staring at their phones more. And this not only just structurally has an effect on them, or they're just immobile, not moving, but the screen bits of information are overloading the brains, creating a sympathetic response. So you have a stress response that's lowering the immune response all the time in these kids. Now couple that with they don't sleep, they're never playing anything outside, they're not engaging. Specializing in one sport is another one. That's become the single greatest risk factor for youth injuries, is early specialization in one sport, meaning playing over 8 months a year in a single sport. The American training paradigm in that lifestyle is a bigger, faster, stronger. Just develop these single unit entities where just increase velocity, increase foot speed. And what we have is we're breaking rules in training as well in this American lifestyle to create this increase in ability, but it's at the expense of durability, and nobody can last anymore. Now you take that business, youth, sports, the American disastrous lifestyle, now you couple it with the parents who just want the best for their kids. There's a love that a parent has for a child that is immeasurable. It is, I want the best for my child. I'm going to enroll them in the best, and they're just getting misguided with false information. You put that all together, and the kid's body can't last. And the bodies are screaming for help in pain, in dysfunction. And all we're doing is kind of just figuring out another way to go about it and push until all of a sudden there's a breaking point, and it's surgery at 9 years old, like I just said, or in a knee or a concussion, or they're on anxiety and depression medication because they can't perform. There's such a pressure to perform now. So their bodies basically can't sustain. And it's the price being paid is not coming out of the parent's pocketbook. It's coming out of the child's system, their human body.
How can parents keep their kids safe and still play sports? How can kids in general just stay healthy?
We'd love to, everybody's looking for that single finger to put in the dam. You know, they're looking for that silver bullet, the American silver bullet, but they're not realizing that the dam's overflowing. So unfortunately, it's not going to be a single thing that we can talk about, and that's why it's illustrated in the book, the many facets that go into it. Now, first and foremost, play as many sports as you can when you're little. Just let your kids explore as many sports. And what I mean is, kids mature at different rates. What that illustrates is that a child 1 year, the way their body is just developed and programmed, they may excel in a certain sport and have a lot of fun because they're decent at it, or they like it for whatever reason that they know. And then the next year they had a growth spurt, or they developed a little further along, and now they're better at another sport. And they're not as good as that one sport, but because we've totally isolated and made them specialized little robots, now all of a sudden they don't get the chance to explore that. So I really say to put the decisions back in the hands of the child. They polled a bunch of kids during, like, who wants to win? Like, their reason for playing sports. And it was like 20-something% reported that they wanted to win. The rest of them were just, I want to have fun with my friends. And so that's one of the things, is putting back the focus back on your child's experience in sports. Two, the best in the world around the world who are developing athletes, that's their job, is to develop athletes. When they have a 9, 10, or 11-year-old, 90% of their weekly sporting activity is just movement. It's called general physical preparedness, meaning they're just moving around. They're just learning their bodies. It has nothing to do with the sport. And 10% is skill specific, meaning it would be shooting a basketball, kicking a soccer ball, throwing a baseball. In this country at 9, 10, 11 years old, we've gone overboard where it's 90% skill, where we're just competing all the time. Compete, lesson. And these kids don't know how to tie their shoes and stand on one leg. So it's getting back to how the best develop, and it's general movements initially to skill stuff later on as they become more developed. It's getting back to eating the right foods, eating better foods, and nourishing our bodies, because ultimately that's what the body uses to rebuild tissue after a practice or a game or a fall, or when they're developing at this rapid rate at these early ages. They need proper foods. We need to control technology. We need to limit the amount of screen time that these kids are having. On average, it's like 4 to 7 hours a day. It needs to be less than that. No kid needs a smartphone till high school, in my opinion. And so it's one of those things where, one, having them play as many sports as they can. If they don't want to and they just want one sport, there's nothing wrong with that one sport. But let's take baseball, for instance. Okay, so here's a great example. My child only loves baseball. Great. That's awesome. Okay, baseball is a spring-summer sport. You play on one team during the spring and summer. When that season is over, you're done with baseball. You do not touch a baseball, because the biggest, best big leaguers in the world don't touch baseballs in the off season. So if the biggest, strongest, best in the world don't, your 10 and your 11 and 12, 13-year-old should not either. So, but you got to have a plan. In the off season now, what's the plan? Because we only play one sport, okay? You're going to have a daily movement preparation plan, working on fundamentals of movement like squatting, deadlifting, things like a baby, lunging, walking, skipping, bear crawling, crab walking, standing on one leg, push, pulls, hang from a bar. These things that babies mastered. So we're going to do this 7 days a week, multiple times a day. We're going to order from a local farm, and we're going to bring in some foods, and we're going to cook together as a family. We're also going to go on a family trip to one of the Hall of Fames of our sport. Let's take baseball. Only we're not going to play there. We're just going to go observe, because my kid loves baseball. So learn the history of baseball. Now they're going to get books. They've got 3 books checked out at the library that they're going to read this offseason on their favorite players, grit, persistence, adversity. They're going to be well-rounded. Now they're going to start doing some research behind the best that they like to follow. They're also going to watch video upon video on YouTube of their favorite players and watch what they do all season long. They're going to do this in the offseason, They're going to be with their families. They're going to celebrate. They're going to move around. They're going to nourish. They're going to grow. They're going to develop, so that next time spring comes, they are heads and shoulders developed more than they would be had they played in 5 other teams over that course of time. But that's the leap of faith, because if you go to a coach and tell them that, a travel team coach, the travel team coach who makes money from your child signing up, solely makes money on your child signing up, he is going to have a problem with that. And if he does, with development, that's someplace you don't want to be. And some of it doesn't take any certification to become a travel coach. It just takes organization and money. And so that's one of the things you got to kind of filter through some of the stuff, but have a plan. Have a plan. After all, they are kids. There is a time to specialize and get serious. And here's my testimonial, and I'll get off my soapbox on this. I specialized. I played everything. I played basketball and baseball competitively because I loved it. I loved tennis and golf too, but I couldn't play those during the baseball season. So I played everything. My senior year of high school, I cut out basketball. So I had played basketball, baseball competitively up through my senior year. That's the only year I specialized in baseball, and I was the state player of the year. The best player in the state in 1996. Until then, I was not. I was growing, I was developing, and then it came to a point where I was like, wow, I kind of come into my own. I'm starting to do certain things in baseball that I couldn't do last year. Interesting. Now I'm going to try to play college next year. I gotta focus. So it was only when I was 18 years old that I whittled down to one sport. And you'll start to see that the best in the world do that too. 7 out of 10 Olympians are multi-sport athletes. We got to have a plan. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a single finger in a dam. You need a well-rounded approach. And what's great is it involves the whole family.
So let's say that plan does go wrong and your child who's playing does get an injury, and doctors say that it requires surgery. What is the best way to know if that surgery is the right way to go about things, or if there's a better way?
Right. Now, if we're talking surgery, if that word's coming up, that means it's necessary. It's one of those things like when my dad had the surgery in 1974, his ligament was destroyed. It wasn't there anymore. So he either has the surgery and has a chance, or he doesn't, and he's never going to throw a baseball ever again. So when we're talking about surgeries, that must mean that if you've weighed out an option, that you have to have it. If there's any kind of a second or third opinion where somebody says, according to your film, according to our diagnostic measures, there's a chance you don't have to have surgery. Take that chance. Explore that to the greatest nth of the degree of function, because you don't want surgery. Because here's the reality of it. If you have a surgery, that means you got injured. That means you were dysfunctional prior to that point. You weren't doing well. You weren't developed. You weren't prepared. You weren't ready. That's why you got injured. Okay. Now you have to rehab from that state of function you were at before, because you weren't really doing well. So you have to raise that level before the surgery. Now you have a surgery, which is a cut to the system, usually bone. They're going to drill. There's a transplant. There's some sort of, you actually have to rehab twice. You have to rehab from the surgery itself. And typically what ends up happening is once you have a surgery, your chances of coming back are a lot lower, but you've just been put up against the wall. You just had a mountain laid out in front of you because of the choice of surgery. So again, weigh out the decision that you're going to get cut on or not cut on very, very, very seriously, because a surgery should be an absolute, we don't have any other choices. It is 100% necessary for us to even try to play more sports. We got to have surgery.
So I know you cover surgery and many, many other things in your book. So just jumping back to that, will you tell us just a little bit about what all the book covers, and then where can we find the book?
Yeah, so the book covers everything from the cause of all sports injury epidemics, where it's coming from. It'll give a lot of information to the background of exactly what your chances are of playing professional and college level sports. It talks about lifestyle problems that we're seeing in America with a lot of stats, a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of sources, and then it offers up, and this is what's, in my opinion, what's been lacking is there's a lot of books, there's a lot of articles, there's a lot of things out right now that are bringing awareness to numbers and stats and science towards these injury epidemics. But what they're not offering is a solution, because nobody has been on the side that I have been on. As a player, as a rehab specialist, as a trainer, and being injured himself. So nobody's been on both sides and been able to provide. Well, now there's finally a solution. And in the book, I make it into an easily digestible 4-part plan. It's called Rethink, Replenish, Rebuild, and Recover. And it goes through step by step what you can do, whether you've sustained, you or your athlete has sustained an injury, or whether you're just trying to prevent one in the best way possible, following these 4. Now, no one more is better than the other. They're all very important, and they all need to be applied. And it marks out, with step by step on exactly, there's recipes in there. There's places to buy good farm foods to have them shipped to your house. There's a training plan for a beginner, intermediate, advanced. There's a tryout test, which is a diagnostic in nature test that you can run any athlete or human really through, and you can see kind of what's below the water of the iceberg. Like we can only see the tip of the iceberg in a lot of these athletes. We don't know what's going on underneath. That's what I do in my office. Well, now I'm giving the power into the parents' hands, coaches' hands, and the players' hands. And then there's tried and true recovery methods that I've been applying to training high-end athletes, to people with MS or diabetes or various conditions, but all human in nature. And so these examples I've put into this 4-step process that, again, is very easy to apply in the privacy of your home, because we shouldn't have to go to some specialized facility in Texas or Florida to save our child. There's no doctor that's going to save your child. There's no organization that's going to save your child. The answer, the solution, is in the homes. And that's where the bulk of this change has to come from, which is great because it's right now in the parents' hands. Awesome. It's in your hands. You guys take it and go. Run with it. But there's a huge amount of accountability that's going to be placed in their hands as well. But they're parents. It should be. You're raising your kids to be healthy, functional, productive, and happy adults. And that's what we're looking for. So the book's title is called Minimize Injury, Maximize Performance, a Sports Parent Survival Guide. And there's a landing page for the book if you go to don'tcutmykid.com. Don'tcutmykid.com is where you can find all my social media connects, my website to my practice, and then locations on how to purchase the book, and some press that we've gotten, and some quotes, support quotes that we've gotten as well.
Okay, well that's kind of cool because there's a lot of things that give out problems, but a lot less things they actually give out a solution to the problem. So just to wrap things up here, I went out onto the social media accounts for my podcast, and I asked people if they have questions for a doctor, and these are specifically athletes. If they would have questions for a sports doctor about how to stay healthy, what would it be?
Great.
And I just have a few here. The first two are kind of related. And the first one is, how can high contact sports prevent knee injuries?
So that's a good question. You want to think of the body. Well, you want to think of sports as being force. It's not necessarily weight that we're working with, but it's force that we're absorbing and creating. By that I mean the head on average weighs about 10 to 12 pounds. Well, if you threw somebody's head into somebody else, there's more than 10 to 12 pounds of force. When we walk, a 200-pound man, when they walk, is experiencing twice their body weight of force into the legs. A 200-pound man is experiencing, when they walk, 400 to 600 pounds of force. What about when they're cutting and juking and jiving and sprinting and stopping and jumping? It's crazy levels of force that are in the thousands. So one thing you have to think of is we are bipeds, meaning we are on 2 feet. Everything we do is based on that foot to ground contact. If our foot, ankle, and calf complex is not extremely strong, it doesn't matter what your quads, hamstrings, and glutes do. It doesn't matter what your spinal erectors do or your rotator cuff or any of that stuff. You have to keep that base very, very strong. So, again, Not weight oriented, because the best squatters, deadlifters, and benchers aren't your best athletes, most resilient athletes. I've trained a lot of NFL players in my day, and I asked those guys, some of the best in their position, when's the last time you max benched or max squatted or max deadlift? They're like, what are you talking about? They don't do it because it's not relatable to anything. It's an easily objective measure that a college coach or some program can kind of identify, but it doesn't mean you're a good mover. And a lot of the times weightlifters are not good athletes. Nothing wrong with lifting weight, but you got to be able to move first, because movements are then resisted, but you got to own that movement. And that's what your sport is. It's just a collection of movements where you're absorbing and creating force. So own the movements first. Squats, deadlift, the movement. Babies own squats early on. Babies own deadlifts early on. They learn how to breathe to stabilize their pelvis and spine. So it's mastering those fundamental movements from the ground up, learning how to absorb force and create force, and then just trying to create. Now here's the key, okay? And this is what's lacking in a lot of sports development. This is what's lacking in rehab. It's embarrassing in rehab, to be honest with you, in this country. If you think about playing contact sports, whether it's lacrosse, soccer, I mean, there's contact in everything. Football, rugby, the level of stimulus being a tackle, the hardest tackle you'd ever sustain or create, the hardest you'd ever run. Your training and preparation has to exceed that. And that doesn't happen. I don't see on the faces of athletes the same face I see on the field. The psychological and emotional component is gone. Everybody's just training. It's cookie cutter reps, sets and reps, weight belts, stick with the program, 3 times a week, recovery on Sunday, you're done. I'm sorry. It's a 24/7, 7 days a week, multiple times a day deal. And you have to raise a bar above. Your preparation has to exceed your performance. And it doesn't in this country. Our preparation is a joke. And therefore our performance is great, but we can't sustain it. Therefore that's a joke. Doing something for a couple years is not really credible. I won't applaud that. Doing something for a very long period of time or coming back from an injury and sustaining, we want to look to those athletes and see what they're doing, because success leaves clues. So again, learn to absorb and create force, master foundational movements, and raise your preparation stimulus greater than your performance level. Done.
So let's say that, for example, their knee is feeling sore, and the person who asked this specifically plays soccer a lot, so it's a very high running sport where you're running constantly throughout the game, through practices, etc. So what is the best way to help your knee when it is sore already?
Okay, so the body has a warning system to let us know that stuff is wrong, that stuff is not right. And that warning system is through symptoms. So when the key word there was sore, that means that there's some sort of damage underneath the body. And there's damage all the time when we train. Training is controlled damage. Rehab is controlled damage, but we build up. We're more resilient the next day, and now we're a totally different athlete than we were before. Thus, we can be trained harder every single day. So now, if there's soreness, that means there's tissue damage. Tissue damage has inflammation and swelling. That's the body's response to healing. The body made inflammation and swelling and pain in order to trigger a healing response. So we want to listen to it. Now what that means is, if we're defining the difference between, is it sore just because I'm training sore, like I'm just tired, or is it is it injury sore? Training sore will go away in less than 48 hours, or it'll get a lot better. That soreness in the knee that lingers, that's that check engine light that comes on in your car. That's the warning. That's the fire alarm that goes off in the kitchen. Now we've got a lot of ways of triggering those fire alarms to being shut off, or we throw them out the window, or we put tape over the check engine light. We take NSAIDs, over-the-counter anti-inflammatories, which is a big mistake. We ice things to numb it out and delay healing. So you got to think that there's a source of damage coming to that part of your knee, whatever it may be, and that's the first warning. Now, the source of all injury, the number one cause of all injury, is the body's inability to absorb force. The number 2 cause is previous injury. So I don't know the history of this person, but if there's injury to the ankles, feet, they've had a history of orthotics, collapsed arches, shin splints, that ankle, foot, and calf is not really well. So we got to train that and teach that how to absorb force. And the knee is one little string of the web, but all the other components affect that knee. So one, listen to the warning that your body's telling you right now. You got some soreness from soccer. You might have to step out of your skill set for a little bit, meaning in order to heal, you got to step out of practice. You got to step out of soccer for a while and let the body heal and develop itself. It's like if somebody walked into a natural health clinic and wanted to beat lung cancer, no doctor in his right mind is going to say, okay, we're going to do this. You can continue to smoke while we go ahead through our process. So you can't do that. So you got to think, and it's hard now because everybody's competing and doing all this stuff year round, but maybe you step out so that when you go back and test on the field, your knee, your body will let you know, hey, it's good. But again, there's always a warning before these big disastrous injuries. My dad's elbow, 11 years of elbow pain. Doctors quieted it down with over 40 cortisone shots. So his ligament just couldn't hold on, but his body was warning him for a really long time. So again, all these injuries, every time somebody comes in with this torn leg, like the big stuff, the big major things, is this the first time you've ever felt it? Oh, no. I've had it for months. Or I rolled my ankle, last year, and that's fine now, but now my knee. So again, the body will warn, heed that warning, have a plan. Leaving your skill is step one, because if you're going to dry off, you want to leave the rain first.
Well, that's something I would love to talk to you about in the future one day. But for now, I think we'll leave it here. And thanks again for coming on. Again, this was Dr. Tommy John III.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, Matt.
All right. Thank you. So this week's crazy sport voted on by you guys is cheese rolling. What's that, you ask? Cheese rolling is played in Broxworth, England. It is an annual event where... Picture the running of the bulls, where you have this mad crowd of people, and they're running, and there's a bunch of bulls chasing them. That's similar to what it's like. A block of cheese is rolled down this really steep hill, and then you have hundreds of people descending down just to catch this wheel of cheese. So picture that. And that's about it. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you for your time. Remember, stay tuned because tomorrow on YouTube will be the release of the preseason preliminary for LSU. It's going to be a video only on YouTube. Just go to the SEC Fanatic channel and it'll be there. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, all that other fun stuff. This has been SEC Fanatic. Thank you for watching/listening to the end. You are what makes this show worth it. Your host has been Matthew Johnson. Our guest of the week has been Dr. Tommy John III. The song of the week is Drums and Percussion, royalty free. No copyright is held for any still pictures, motion graphics, or music. If you have improvements that you would like to suggest, you can make them at any of our social media places. Facebook, search SEC Fanatic. Twitter, @FanaticSEC. Or Instagram, @SEC_Fanatic. You can also contact us at secsportsfanatic@gmail.com. If you liked what you heard, there's more. You can listen on YouTube, Stitcher, or iTunes. Links are in the description. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your time. This has been SEC Fanatic.